Okay, place that we're here for the Levaya of Mrs. Gerda, Mrs. Abramchik. The order of the speakers will be Joseph Abramchik, followed by David, who will be live streamed in, then by Vital. So we're going to begin right now with Joseph Abramchik.
I guarantee you I'll never be able to do justice today for my mother, but I will certainly try. The truth of the matter is I haven't had any time to I just put thoughts down on a piece of paper, because when I spoke to my mother this morning between 9:15 and 9:30, she was fine. She was feeling much better. She wasn't feeling well the last couple of days, and the nurses were keeping me updated on I don't want to say an hourly basis, but basically as late as last night, the charge nurse from the 3 to 11 shift had called me at around 10 o'clock saying she's resting comfortably. So when I spoke to her this morning, the farthest thing from my mind was that 3 hours later, she wasn't going to be here anymore. So you will excuse me, I jotted down some things, and for those of you who know me, I claim to be a very organized individual, and I write things down, and then I read from my notes. So this is going to be somewhat disorganized, but you should know that the thoughts come from the heart. Today was my mother's Hebrew birthday. She turned 98 today. And this is what they say is that it's a misas neshika, that a Kodesh Baruch Hu gives her a kiss when you die on your birthday. And the neshama, the soul goes straight to Shamayim. And I believe she deserved that. Today being the 16th of Sivan. And did she know that today was her birthday, her Hebrew birthday? Well, most probably not. Her English birthday would have been on Monday. She went to Buckingham nursing home approximately 2 years ago. You know what? I don't need a mic. Oh, for my kids. What?
They want to be able to hear you online.
Trust me, they can hear me. And it was a fight that I had with my mother, because there was no reason for my mother to go into Buckingham. She was living in her own condo, and she was taking care of herself. But she insisted. I fought with her, or Elke and I fought with her for over a year. And then I realized that something very difficult for me, that I wasn't going to win. And I said, okay, Ma, whatever you want, but I think you should try it out first, and then you'll let us know. She was born in Berlin. She witnessed Kristallnacht, and she was probably one of the last of the Jews that left Germany, because her father, who had served in the army, the German army, said they're not going to do anything to us, just like a lot of Jews. They never thought that they would be the ones that would be affected. But at the last moment, they left, and they went to Shanghai. My mother would tell me the story that they went to not she, but her parents went to a travel agency to book tickets, and they said something, you have two choices where they're accepting Jews. One was Shanghai, and one was some other country that I never heard of, and I don't even remember what the name was. So her parents said, I don't know either country, so let's try Shanghai. So they went to Shanghai. She came to Shanghai with her parents and her older brother. She got married in Shanghai. She lived in Shanghai for a number of years. In fact, my older brother was born in Shanghai. So we always used to joke that he's Chinese. And then they came to New York in January of 1947. So my brother was approximately 3 months old when he came to America. My mother was a kindergarten teacher in Shanghai. She raised us, the three of us, basically by herself, because my father was a traveling shochet, and he never had a job in Chicago. He had, his job was, I don't want to say all over America, but basically all over America. He would leave Sunday morning, and he would come back for Shabbos, whether Thursday night or Friday, depending on what the schedule was. So she would raise us, and as soon as my father would come into the house on either Thursday night or Friday morning, she had a list of everything that we did wrong. And it was a long list. And then my father would chase us around the dining room table and said, do me a favor, can you stop already so I can hit you and then whatever. And that's exactly what happened week after week. Now my mother was a sales lady at Wieboldt's department store. Now half of you people don't even remember what Wieboldt's was all about because it doesn't exist anymore, but she was a sales lady at that department store. She also volunteered at Meet Women and at the Ark. Her greatest love was not necessarily her children, but it was the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and the great-great-grandchildren. When our granddaughter, I told you I'm skipping all over the pages. Wherever I find something written, I'll just say it. So when our granddaughter got married in November of 2019, our granddaughter said, I really want Bubby to be at the wedding. And she came. Now you have to realize she was 96 years old at the time, and traveling was not easy, but when her granddaughter, called her and bugged her, she decided to get on the plane, and she flew to the wedding, and she had a great time. And that's something that not all people have the zechut, the merit of having their granddaughter, great-granddaughter, or that had a great-grandmother at the wedding. Her biggest thing was she always wanted her family to be happy, safe, and healthy. Every morning when I would call her, she, not that she wouldn't ask how I am feeling, but that wasn't important. How are the grandchildren? How are the great-grandchildren? How are they feeling? Is everybody healthy? And what's going on in Israel? What's going on in Israel? That was her prime concern. About everybody else, nothing about herself. In fact, whenever we would come to visit her, she would, I don't want to say she would throw us out. It didn't make a difference whether we were in the condo or we were in the nursing home. She would say, go home. Okay? And every once in a while, we would listen to her, and then we did go home because we knew it aggravated her that we bothered her, what she considered to be a bother, that we were visiting her. And she didn't realize that that's what we wanted to do. It had nothing to do just with us. It had to do with my nieces as well. The grandchildren will remember her for the eggs that she made whenever they came to visit. And there was a tradition that on the last day of Pesach, she would make a chemzelech for us, because at that time, we didn't keep gebrukst, and so the last day we were fortunate enough to have it. She never wanted to talk about her life in Europe or in Shanghai. It was always, that was a different time. I don't want to talk about it. In fact, when there was a number of years ago, Germany, they sent out an invitation for those Jews that had left Germany or were thrown out of Germany, however you want to look at it, to come back. And they were paying the total expenses for anybody from all over the world to come. And my uncle, Oliver Sholem from California, he said he was going. Okay, so he wanted to go with his sister, and my mother refused. There's no way that I want to I don't want to see what transpired in Germany or what it is built up today, and that all of a sudden they, quote unquote, whatever it means, love the Jews. I remember, and I don't remember how many years ago it was, but Rabbi Shapiro from Erie Crown convinced my mother to talk in front of Erie Crown about about what happened to her during Kristallnacht. And knowing my mother, I don't know how Rabbi Shapiro did it, but he did, and she did speak in front of the classroom. A number of years ago, Elke and I convinced my mother that I wanted her to be interviewed by somebody who was going to write a book about her. And she said, Narishkeit, what are you doing that for? I said, I'm doing it for your great-great-grandchildren. Okay. So she was interviewed, and we have a little book that was written. And we say, thank God that it was done, because our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren one day will be able to read it, and they could see where they came from. We took my mother to Israel on a number of our trips when our oldest grandson, which would have been her oldest great-grandson, was putting on tefillin for the first time. So she came with us. And he put on tefillin, and his great-grandmother saw him put on tefillin at the kotel, which was, again, she was zocha, and, our grandson was zocha also, that her great-grandmother was able to see him put on tefillin for the first time. It's also very interesting that when our great-granddaughter was born, almost 2 years ago, they came. In other words, our grandson and his wife, our granddaughter, came to Chicago and introduced their daughter to my mother. She came. They brought her to the nursing home, and the pictures that we have of that are they're really not replaceable. These were, and she would get down on all four and play with her great-grandchildren, which is something that you're not able to see or to be zocha to have, and we were. I would like to thank our nieces, the ones here in Chicago, Aviva, Meira, and Ilana. I'm not thanking their husbands. I'm just thanking the nieces who basically, besides Elka, would visit Bobby on a regular basis, talk to her probably every day of the week, just like Elka and I did. And, that meant a lot to my mother, whether my mother would admit it, but she loved the fact. And then, of course, also the children, the great-granddaughters, great-grandchildren that were here that would visit, whether it be on a Shabbos or just walk over there. That was something that, again, she enjoyed. I also have to give a plug to Buckingham, which is difficult for me to do. But when my mother decided that that's where she wanted to spend her last years, and we thought there would be more years, but Buckingham really went beyond the call of duty. And like I said, up to last night, 10:30, when the charge nurse from the 3 to 11 shift called me to tell me the progress. So and my mother liked being there. Okay, my father was there, believe it or not, 18 years ago. So she was happy. She was happy there, and therefore Buckingham deserves a yasher koyach. For those that don't know, my mother survived COVID, okay? It was November or December time when, I don't remember. Elka, when did she get COVID? Earlier. So she was probably one of the first people to get COVID. So, and she didn't even know she had COVID. She was complaining she had a backache. Okay, my mother was very frail, and she had backaches all the time. So when they tested her, yeah, she was positive. Okay, so she's positive. 2 days later, she's doing everything that she was doing before. So it didn't affect her. She was only concerned. She was only concerned about everybody else. How is everybody else doing? That is what my mother was all about. She had told Elka, she wouldn't tell this to me. She would tell Elka, Joe is going to be taking me to Israel pretty soon. So in the beginning, Elka didn't know what she was talking about because she knew that she wasn't flying anywhere. She gave up her passport, so how is she getting on a plane? So after she got off the phone, she's telling me this. She didn't say this just one time. She said it a half a dozen times. So I told her, Ma's waiting for me to take her, to Israel. And the only way she's going, I'm sorry to say, is the way she's going on Motzei Shabbos, on Saturday night, when we get a flight out. I could probably talk for hours, but I think what I jotted down, and again, I didn't have enough time because I had to deal with tickets and I had to deal with the Chevra Kedisha. Believe it or not, it's everybody should live to 120 because it's a heck of a lot of work doing, dealing with all these people and birth certificates and all these things that you didn't need perhaps years ago. My mother, the reason, when my father was nifter, Memorial Day weekend, okay? My mother was nifter 24 hours before Memorial Day weekend. It's mind-boggling. And again, to die on your birthday is also something special. When my father was nifter, it was on the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, and we didn't have any services. We didn't really have any services for him. We had it in the front. It was I think it was Lloyd Mandel, if I'm not mistaken, who had a place somewhere on McCormick, and we had services because we had to get the mace to the airport, which was a whole big problem, 18 years ago as far as Memorial Day weekend. So my mother wasn't happy that we didn't have a formal service to say goodbye. So she would say, and if we were to ask her now, she would say, I don't need it. What do you need it for? So with the guidance of Rabbi Cohn, he felt that it's proper kavod to have a little gathering. In my wildest dreams, now this we set up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and to expect at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to have this many people here is also mind-boggling. So I thank everybody for coming, but my mother would say, well, why did you bother? Because that's the way my mother was. So I don't know, the Oren is not here, which is what we wanted. We didn't want it to be here. So I would ask Mechila from my mother. And I guess I'm supposed to say the pasuk. Bila hamovas l'netzach mocha Adonai Elohimu dima me'al kol panim v'chirpas amo yosid me'al kol ha'oretz ki Adonai diber. I'm supposed to introduce?
David. Okay.
So my younger brother David will be speaking from New York.
I don't know if anyone can hear me.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. So first, I'd like to give a special thanks to Joe and Elka, because certainly it's very difficult when a son and a daughter-in-law live out of town, and the most that we could do is have phone call conversations. And there was, Baruch Hashem, different times that my mother did come to us. In fact, she came to us at different times for Pesach Seder, and the Seders were at my daughter's house together with her husband and the great-grandchildren. In fact, we found every Pesach in the last couple of years, she wasn't able to be there with us. So every time we get to the part of the Seder where it's Korach, so we loudly do it the way that my mother did it with such kavanah. She would always do Yot Lahu, and we remember that very fondly. My mother had a powerful way of relationships. In fact, just today, her great-granddaughter was asked in her English class to write something. And you know what she wrote? She wrote something special about her great-grandmother. And Shavuos, another great-granddaughter, was asked to write a book about someone she loves. And who did she pick? She picked her great-grandmother. So this shows you the type of relationships a great-grandmother could have with little children. And the children has so much love. And they won't forget that, the type of love that she would always be able to give over every time she visited. Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can hear.
Are you able to hear me?
I have to unmute for a second. We can hear you. Just keep. You're fine.
Okay. So I was going to be at someone's house this past Shabbos, this coming Shabbos, and I was preparing the parsha, and it's very apropos. Because the beginning of the parsha, it says, Bahaloscha. And everybody asks the question, what's the relationship between the last parsha and this parsha? And Rashi says something very strange in the way he says that Aaron was faint in a way. He was upset. What was he upset with? He was not part of the Nesiim. And that was, what does Rashi say? Rashi says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Aaron, don't worry. You're going to be given another mitzvah. And what's that mitzvah? Of the menorah. And what's special about the menorah? Rashi says, is meitiv umadlik as a menorah. This was my mother. My mother had menorahs. My mother had these eish, the candles. What were the candles? The candles were her children. The candles were her grandchildren. The candles were her daughter-in-laws. The candles were her son-in-laws. The candles were her great-grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Every day we spoke to her, she ended the conversation is, I just want to know, is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? So she is meitiv umadlik as a menorah. She continued meitiv, made good, and madlik, and lit. The joy in her face and the joy that she imparted to the great-grandchildren and the grandchildren and the daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws, every time she came, this was the koach that she had. And not only that, everywhere she went, that's what she was able to do. My brother left out that she also had worked and volunteered for the Lubavitch. And Lubavitch is a lot of things for her as well. But she was the light of everything. Meitiv umadlik as a menorah. And the parsha also talks about misonenim. People were complaining. My mother didn't complain. And everybody wonders, how could Am Yisrael be complaining? They heard the Aseret Hadibros. They saw Etzba Elokim. How could they complain? So Meforshim say the power of not complaining is if you have an avoda with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that protects you from complaining. Because you know everything that comes, HaKol is tov. Everything is great. Everything is good. That's my mother. That's the type of person she was. That's the part of the thing that she tried to teach to all of us. Very difficult. And as my brother said, not only to thank my brother and my sister-in-law Elka for everything, and the nieces for everything, did a special thanks to the nursing home that we as sons did not want her to go to. We were ready to take care of her, but she says no, because that's not her way of thinking and living, for someone else to take care of her. She took care of everybody else, and she wasn't there to be taken care of. So I have a special thanks to the nursing home as well for everything they did to make her last couple years as pleasant as possible. And to remember, this is the 18 years ago, my father was nifter, and there's 18 years of chai, and she made the best of that chai. And part of her conversation with all of us always would be, so what's going on in Eretz Yisrael? What's going on in America? It's crazy. So if there's anyone, and my mother was very stubborn. She was a yeki, but stubborn in a good way. So if there's anyone who could be a meitzar for all of us, and to go up to a Kadosh Baruch Hu and say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, as we say in Yiddish, Genug Shain. It's time for the Mashiach to come, and we need the Mashiach. If there's anyone who could make that strong complaint and argument to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, was my mother. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight also. I know it's difficult. Bila Mavis Lanetzach, B'mocha Adonai Tekim. Dimo be'al kol panim, v'cherpa samo yokem be'al kol ha'oretz, ki Adonai diber.
I too am quite unprepared. I wrote down a bunch of notes on short notice. Just a few hours ago, my father-in-law called me with the news. It's a very hard thing to tell your children heartbreaking news that they lost their bubby. Whenever we would sit around a Shabbos Suda, the first thing, or one of the things Bobby would demand from us is new. That was the cue for sharing a Dvar Torah. She was makbid that at Suda you have to share some Dvar Torah. So I opened up the Shulchan Aruch to get some guidance on halachos involving hesped, and I was very surprised to see it says clearly mitzvah gedola lahaspid ala meis karoi, that it's a tremendous mitzvah to properly eulogize a nifter. It says umitzvah so sheyarim kol olomar alov devarim hamishabrim esalev. A person's supposed to bring up topics, concepts that pierce or break one's heart, kedei lahabos bechia, to increase crying, ulahazkir shvacho, and to also acknowledge praise about the nifter. The Shach on this says, Kidei laharbos bechia, to increase crying. It says, V'chol hamorid demos al odom kosher, person who pours tears on an odom kosher, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sofran, HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts the tears, u'ma'anicham beveis genozov, and he holds on to those tears. I would say it now, how much more does HaKadosh Baruch Hu need as far as the tears? There's so much that's been going on, and as Uncle David just mentioned, if there's anyone to finally put a stop to everything that's going on and to bring the Golus, to bring the Geula, there's no question that it's Bobby. I stand there with the challenge now of being maspid an Isha Chashuva as Bobby. We never thought this day would come. Not just COVID, broken bones, vertebrae broken. She fell once, I think she broke her kneecaps. Unstoppable. Just the continual, just going on and on and on. In my words, I also am representing the extended mishpacha. I reached out to them earlier to have some thoughts, so I'm going to try incorporating it into my Divrei Hesped. Bobby was our Kosel HaMa'aravi. Our connection to the Beis HaMikdash is the Kosel. That's the makom where we go to daven. It's our only connection that we have to what was, the glory that was. And Bobby was our Kosel HaMa'aravi. She connected us with previous worlds, generations. The little that she would share was tremendous. The kids all talk about the stories, and that book that came out was also tremendous. We got an insight into Bobby that we never knew about. Things that she witnessed. Just shows how she persevered. And just looking out now also, the mishpacha that she has left. It's amazing. We're just now recently celebrating a simcha in New York. The Doros, it's a Pella. I'm sure she didn't even think that she would live to see children, let alone what she was zocha to see. Bobby's German accent, the way she would talk. Hello, when she would answer the phone, when she would greet the children. The kids talk about it in a very loving way. She was refined. My wife told me earlier that sometimes she would ask you, would you like some gum? And she would be chewing her gum herself, but you couldn't even tell that she was chewing gum. She had an art of that refinement, of being able to just carry herself with such dignity. Our children were zocha to have a strong kesher, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. When they were younger, Bubby would babysit for them. She would lay down like blankets for them to sleep, to play. I'll get back to some other memories from the granddaughters later. I had this chusah when we moved on to Koil. We would, on our way to shul, I don't know who came up with the idea. Once we decided that after davening, we might as well stop by Bubby. We passed by the Royalton regularly every week. Let's stop by Bubby and we'll make Kiddush. And it became a regular routine. We'd come, Bubby would be sitting on the stoop in the entranceway to the Royalton. And she would also be like the watch guard. If you walked out without a coat, she would make sure, or comment, "Where's your coat?" And we'd come in, we'd sit, we'd talk a little bit, making Kiddush. Eventually, when my son became bar mitzvah, he would take over making Kiddush, and then we started making Havdalah. So Bubby would praise me for doing it, but in all honesty, when she moved to Buckingham, did I go to Buckingham to make Kiddush for her? She was on the way, which I'm not shrugging it up, but it was just the opposite. It was tremendous for us to be able to make Kiddush for her and Havdalah for her. It was a schus for us to interact with her. As was mentioned above, how she would share some memories of Kristallnacht, but just to understand where Bubby came from and what she was zoche with Zadie to build. A German girl marrying a European yeshiva bacher wasn't a regular occurrence. It was more about survival, but about building. And the girls talk about how they would see Zadie sitting in his room, learning. Those are tremendous memories to have. And Bubby's support for Zadie, to watch a couple interact and give kavod to each other, is also tremendous. And now would be a good time to mention as well as we learn from the way their children took care of them. There's no question whether you live near or even far. Uncle David and Julie and my father-in-law and Ima, watching you interact and the care that you showed Bubby is a lesson for us. It's just tremendous on its own. Bubby and Zadie had some unique practices of allowance. She had certain calculations, I guess $1, $2, depending on whether or not you were a bar mitzvah yet. There was a certain allowance she would give to grandchildren. And now I'd like to share some things that were sent to me by the grandchildren to share with. So when the kids were younger, they would go to Bubby in the Royalton. They would do projects with her. They would give her snacks. They would give her individually wrapped cheeses, which is something that the children, she gave them. She would give them individually wrapped cheeses. She loved to play games with them. Let's see here. Whenever they would visit her, they got to pick a sucker, a lollipop, a candy from her candy cabinet. We were zocha recently to have her partake in a Su'udah after COVID, and in the first day she was supposed to come, the weather wasn't cooperating, but we were zocha to all spend a Pesach meal with her, as well as a meal with our recent bar mitzvah. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the text messages. When we go to her house, we would play with the toys. So the kids would play with the toys that were saved from generations to generations, or old toys. I have here, I don't know what this means, but Hopa Rita. Okay. Oh, okay. She'd make eggs and drink out of yellow cups. Just see. Okay. Bubby would make experiences fun and different. She would be makbid to get a gift that matched their interests. Grandchildren would line up on Yom Tov to receive the gift. And later, as they got older, they would clop around with a spoon to find their gifts as well. One summer, when the Lopins would travel to, oh no, this is when you were a kid. One summer, when Aviva was in camp in Mosheva, Bubby hopped onto the 4-hour bus ride to go from Chicago to surprise her on Visitor's Day. Because at that point, my in-laws were living in Connecticut. Bubby never missed a birthday, and even when grandchildren were in Eretz Yisrael, she would mail letters, always with money inside. And as you've picked up, we refer to Bubby affectionately as Bubby Bubby. When we just celebrated Daniel's bar mitzvah, and the Rav asked me, is there anything special he should say or acknowledge? I said he should mention Bubby Bubby. He looked at me, he's like, Bubby Bubby? I said, yeah, Bubby Bubby. She had tremendous hakaras hatov. Well, to people who helped her, in truth, she did. She would deflect assistance, but she really appreciated it. Let me just see one more. Okay, so just to conclude, that our biggest gift to Bubby is nitzchias, is continuing in her ways. It's brought down that when a person is nifter, their special qualities in Divrei Ruchni are out for the grabs. You can get a hold of them, you can grab on. And things that we do now could definitely act as a schus for Bubby as she moves on to Olam HaEmes. One thing that was a common refrain by Bubby is that we should just have shalom. She used to always say, just have shalom. That was a common refrain by Bubby. At this time, I would like to ask Mechila from Bubby if we didn't give her all the kavod that she deserved. It's something special when you can physically lift up your grandmother a flight of stairs, just to literally lift up a person who deserves so much kavod. As I mentioned earlier, that the demos HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been collecting it should be time that he has enough demos, and we should see the Geula, Mocha Hashem Dima Me'al Kol Ponim.
Listening to all that Spadim, not being a son, a grandson, a great-grandson, I just want to say another perspective that nobody mentioned. I wasn't planning on saying this, but nobody mentioned that Mrs. Abramchik riding her bicycle in the neighborhood. That was a sight. That was a sight. Okay. Huh? It's a tricycle, exactly, it's a tricycle. As Joey said earlier, when I got the phone call, I ran to the house, he said, nobody's going to be there. I didn't see the oilam, I've been facing this way. It's unbelievable how many people are here. Okay, I like to say something about Mr. Abramchik. It's a little scary. Scary to say something about anybody, and a little scary to say something about Mr. Abramchik. In davening, somebody took the siddur. In davening every single day, in Psukkah Zimra, we say the following. And by Yivarach David, say, Atahu Hashem levadecha. talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ato asisas hashamayim, you created the shamayim, shemei hashamayim, b'chol tzulam. You created the heavens. Haaretz, you created the earth, b'chol asher aleh, hayamim, b'chol asher b'hem. Ata machayes kulam, and you give the koyach to everything there is in the world. Utzva hashamayim l'chom mishtachavim, and the hosts of the heavens, they bow to you. Ata hu Hashem Elokim, asher b'chata b'Avram. You are Hashem Elokim, asher b'chata b'Avram. You chose Avram. V'otzeisam mirkazdim, you took him out from Borkazdim. V'samta shmoi Avram, u'matzasas levavoi, and you found his heart neman lefanecha. There's a hyphen. It's really the middle of a pasuk. Very unusual to stop there. Ramatis Yo Shlita, shebizlechu refuah shleima seshachol Yisrael, said over in the name of his Rebbe Yibod L'Chaim, Rebbe Lapian Zatzal. It's very strange. Very strange. We're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what he did, what he does, who he is, so to speak. The Shemayim, everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's. And then what happens? We get to the climax. He found Avram Avinu to be the Neman, the trustworthy person. What's the continuation? What's the Akdama? What's the preface? What's the introduction? So Rabbi Lapian said a murder thing. He said a person is walking down the street. He's an ani. He's an ani. A poor person, not dressed well. And he's walking down the street. And all of a sudden he stops. He bends down. He looks at the street. He finds something. He picks it up and puts it in his pocket. Would anybody care what he picked up? Look at him. Anything he stopped to pick up is obviously not worth anything. Nobody would care. A king is walking down the street. The whole entourage. Thousands of people behind him. Thousands of people behind him. In all their glory. And the king's walking and everybody's walking by, and all of a sudden the king stops. And the king bends down and picks something up, looks at it, and puts it in his pocket. Everybody wants to know what he picked up. Everybody wants to know what he picked up. Says Rabbi Lapian, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying the following. There's a world, the whole world, the universe, the galaxies, everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then all of a sudden there's a pasuk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose Avram Avinu. Who is this Avram Avinu? What is this Avram Avinu? What's so special about Avram Avinu? His achnos achim? No, that was unbelievable. His chesed, unbelievable. It's not mentioned. He was what? He was a neman lefanecha. He was a neman lefanecha. What does it mean? He was a neman lefanecha. Avram Avinu was a neman lefanecha. What does a neman mean? For those people not used to it, my mother, Allah Shalom's father, Allah Shalom, my Zayda had a farm. And he was a cattle dealer. And 90% of the people he dealt with were non-Jews, maybe more. But when I was a kid growing up, he was still in the business. The saying was like this: if Harry Mayo gave his word, that was as good as gold. Finished. If I would say something about the Abramchiks, and there's much to say about the Abramchiks, and maybe some people would disagree about what certain people would say about the Abramchiks, but no one would disagree about the following. When the Abramchiks say they're going to do something, they do it. When the Abramchiks give their word, it's done. You can go to the bank with it. I have the same feeling in the times that I spoke to Mrs. Abramchik. She was a neman. She was a neman. She was a neman. She said something, she did it. Maybe you didn't agree with what she said. That's your problem, as Joey would say. But she did it. She did it. She did it. She said it and she meant it. I want to tell you what it means to be a neman. I want to give you an example. Not for Mrs. Abramchik. I want to give you a story. There's a Jew in Lakewood named Baruch Ber Yafi. He's a Rav. He's a Rav, a little bit older. He's a Rav in an old shul in Lakewood. He had a father, I never knew him. His father's name was Mordechai Yafi. Mordechai Yafi is one of the 10 people who started Lakewood Yeshiva. Lakewood Yeshiva started in what's it called? Plains, what's it called? White Plains, thank you. Started in White Plains. And they hired Rabbi Cutler, and he was the one who really got him involved together with a few other Yidden. And he ended up moving to Lakewood. In 1945, he moved to Detroit, this is Mordechai Yaffe. From Detroit, he decided he wanted to make a yeshiva. He wanted to help Klal Yisrael. In those days, he moved to St. Louis. He moved to Kansas City, Missouri. His wife didn't want to go. She got on a train one day from Detroit before they moved to Kansas City. She went to Rabbi Aaron Kotler, and she went with a question, should we move? There's no chinuch, what should we do? Rabbi Aaron Kotler said, if you mean it, l'shem shamayim, you can go. So she said to Rabbi Aaron Kotler, will you give it? And Rabbi Aaron Kotler said, I guarantee your kids will be okay. She said, will you give it to me in writing? He said, yes. He said, well, if you're willing to give it to me in writing, I don't need it in writing. She turned around, took the train back, and went with her husband, and she was asking him to go to Kansas City. She went to Kansas City. So he's in Kansas City, and he ended up not only becoming an educator, he had to become a fundraiser for the school. Okay. So he goes out to this town. They invited him out to speak, and he says to the town like this, I'm willing to come, but I have to tell you the truth. I only eat, in those days, 1946, I only eat meat from New York. You know, if you have a person who does that, they don't come. Otherwise, I can't come. I won't have anything to eat. So they said, yeah, we have one Jew like that who rather is makbid. He only takes meat from New York. Great. So he comes. And they tell him where the house is. He goes, walks up to the house. He looks through the window, and he sees a man with a white beard over a Gemara. Gewaldig. Knocks on the door. Man comes, open the door. He says, they told me I could stay by your house for Shabbos because you eat meat. You get your meat from New York. He says, it's true, I do get my meat from New York, and you're welcome to stay with me for Shabbos, but I have to tell you, I'm a Machal Shabbos. I'm Machal Shabbos. Says, Mordechai Yaffe looks at him and says, what do you mean? He says, come in. Comes in, he says, listen, I came, who knows what this means? I came, Mrs. Abramchik knew what it means. I came to America when I was 11 years old. My parents had no money, we were starving. A few of our neighbors' kids had died from starvation. My parents put me on a boat. My father said I have a brother who lives in the Lower East Side. He'll take care of you. Hey, go to America, at least you live. Go to America. What does it mean? 10-year-old kid gets on a boat, goes to America, goes to his uncle's house, and his uncle tells him, after a week, I have no food either. Get a job. He's 11 years old right now, get a job. So he gets a job. Friday, he tells the boss he's not coming in. He's fired. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. By the third week, the uncle tells him, listen, the raid's out in the city. Everybody knows you can't get a job because you're the kid that doesn't work on Shabbos. And finish, you better make a decision what to do. He's starving. His uncle had no food. He had only food because he got whatever he got paid for. So Monday, he's starving. By Tuesday, he goes into a place and the guy says, you going to work on Shabbos? He says, yes. Comes Shabbos morning. He gets up in Lower East Side and he says, I can go to Minyan. See, Davin Ashkam. From the Lower East Side, he was working up in Midtown Manhattan. He said, I don't take a train, I'll walk. So he walked to Midtown Manhattan. He got to Midtown Manhattan, he gets to the factory, his job was on the 10th floor. He walks the 10 flights of stairs. He said, I don't take an elevator. He gets to the 10th floor, opens the doors, and sees a whole factory of Jews working on Shabbos. He slams the doors, runs downstairs, runs out of the factory, runs to a park, sits down on a bench, and says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I will die before I work on Shabbos. So Mordechai Yaffe looks at him and says, you didn't work on Shabbos, what are you talking about? He says, I went to work on Shabbos. I went to work on Shabbos. A Neman is a person who can live through Shanghai, doesn't know what's going to happen. A Neman is a person who maintains their faith with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Neman is a person who has said, live through Kristallnacht. What does it mean to live through Kristallnacht? Get in a boat, go across the world. What do we know from this? What do we understand it with our cell phones and everything else we have? Get in a boat and then go to Shanghai, and then get married in Shanghai. What was Shanghai about? Read about what was going on in Shanghai. You're living in a 5-bedroom apartment with air conditioning and all the food you want in the fridge and the freezer. Nothing going on there. Dedicated to a husband who decided to mechanech children. That's a Neman. That's a Neman. Then cross the ocean, come back, come to a city. What's going to be a parnasa? My husband leaves, as was said, on Sunday morning, comes back on Friday afternoon, week after week after week after week after week after week. That's a neman. A person who makes a decision. A person who makes a decision. You say very often that the Chazon Ish says that a person is born, the parsha that the person is born has a connection to them. Anything that happens to us, we're connected. We're connected to the Yontif, to Shabbos, to the parsha, to the Haftarah. Many people name their children after things that took place in the parsha. Rabbi say, what does it say in the parsha? Many things. A lot of things happening in Balaischa. One of the most famous psukim in Balaischa. Mrs. Abramchik died during Parshas Balaischa. Lo yichein avdi Moshe. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Aaron and to Miriam, you're making a mistake. You don't understand. B'chol beisi nemanhu. Moshe Rabbeinu was a neman. Says Rabbi Lapian, the climax of Avram Avinu is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's description more than everything else is that he's a neman. He did not waver in his faith for a moment. Moshe Rabbeinu is a neman. Mr. Abramchik may not like this, but she's going to scream and say, Avram, Moshe, you say Mr. Abramchik? I'm going to say Mr. Abramchik. Avram and Moshe and Mr. Abramchik. A neman. A neman maintained the faith through everything that happened. Everything that happened. Who are we to understand what it means to go through? And not only to go through, but to remain a neman. That's today's Levaya. Not many people left like this from that door. A lot to learn. We're tapioca. We all know something happens to us. At 69 in the base medish, I want it to be 70. At 70 base medish, I want it to be 69. I'm talking about myself. I want my car to be cooler or my car to be hot, warmer. We all know what we need. And then there was a generation of Jews that preceded us. Neman. Who created doiros of ne'emanim, who maintain their faith and maintain their word. That's the legacy. Legacy is that a person can go to Shemayim and be called a ne'eman. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that's what I want. Ubacharta, I chose Avram Avinu ne'eman lefanecha. So, it was challenging this afternoon, as Joey said, making decisions. We thought that maybe we could have a Levaya tomorrow morning to give people a little bit more time, but in order to get there to Yisrael, you have to leave 8:30 tomorrow morning. The flight's 8:30, so it's impossible to have had a Levaya. We want to have a Levaya this evening at 8 o'clock, maybe at 9 o'clock, which would have been a little bit easier for people. We have a bar mitzvah in shul. And the Abramchiks would not disrupt someone else's simcha. And Mrs. Abramchik, Allah Shalom, would zicha not wanted to disrupt someone else's simcha. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu worked it out. The kavod that she wasn't zeicha, or she felt she wasn't zeicha to be able to give to her husband, ishtay kegufay. That kavod is being taken care of now. Because she's the one who helped. She's the one who made that her husband was able to be the Talmid Chacham that he became, and she's the one who helped that he was able to do everything he was able to do for the mishpacha. I want to end. My Francis is here. I want to end. Sometimes, in the first 6 years in Chicago, when I was in the kollel, for some reason I don't remember why, I wasn't able to daven mincha in the kollel. Sometimes I couldn't daven shachris in the kollel, carpools. I don't remember what it was. So I davened in Matal. Matal was the shul when the younger light couldn't daven in the kollel. We went to Matal. So in Matal, there was this man. He used to stand in the entrance hall before davening with his head in the sefer, buried in the sefer. And when davening started, he would open up a drawer. I don't know if the table's still there. He would open up a drawer and put the sefer back in the drawer. I didn't know who this Jew was. I didn't know who he was. So every time I walked into Matal, same place, standing by this table with a sefer open, learning from the sefer. And I found out he's a Jewish man named Rabbi Abramchik. That's a neman. That's a neman. A neman, no tumults. I'm doing the Ratzon Hashem. I once tried to take the sefer out to see what he was learning. I put it back right away. He was not happy with me. Okay, it was. I put it back, but he used to watch. We lost 2 Nemonim. I was wondering if I called after being at the Abramchik, I called them back to see if they were nifter on the same day. But it was close enough. So it's Levaya, and it's recovered for both of them. Nemonim lefanecha, they should be zeicha to be a military for the mishpacha, and as everybody else said, to be a military for the city, to be a military for Klal Yisrael. And the limudim from them will definitely be missed. The schusim from them will definitely be missed. But the family that they created should be here with our side. Abi Yishkol Tzedek. Bilam Avos Lanetzach, Moch Hashem Dima Me'al Kopan.
I'm just right. What's the name? Yaspa. El Malei Rachamim Shechein Bimramim Amtzei Menucha Nechoina Kenfei Ashchina V'Malei Kedoshim Etoirim Kezer Kiyam Azirim Es Nishmas Yaspa Bas Tzvi Shachala Ilama Bavur Shmishpacha Yitein Tzedaka Badas Karas Nishmasa Began Eden Tehei Menuchasa Lachein Bala Rachamim Yasireh B'Seisek Kenafav La'ilamim V'Yisra B'Tzara Chaim Es Nishmasa Adenayu Nachlasa V'Zenuach B'Shalayim Al Mishkava V'Neimar Amen.
The Kfur will take place at Eretz Chaim Cemetery Sunday night, approximately 7:30, and the family will be sitting shiva back at Joey's home Monday morning, with the minyanim times will be posted later once the family decides. Please remain standing as the family leaves the shul.
If anybody wants to be a minyan for minchah, I'm starting a minute.
I planned to speak in English originally, but I have a number of people who came unexpectedly. I didn't expect these people to come, cousins and from far north. So I'm going to do Anglit v'Ivrit biyachad כדי שתבינו בדיוק מה אני אגיד. דבר ראשון. דבר שני, שקיעה זה 7:42. אני לא יודע אם אנחנו נספיק להגיע ל-7:42 כדי לקבור את אמא, אבל אם לא נגיע, לא נגיע. ונתחיל את השבעה ביום שני ולא ביום ראשון. יש איזו הלכה שמישהו נפטר והוא משאיר ילדים, אז יש 2 רגשות שבעצם קורה באותו זמן. אחת, שהבן שהוא יורש, הוא יורש ואומר, סליחה, אני אתחיל אחרת. כשהאבא שלו נפטר, הוא אומר, ברוך דיין אמת. כתוב שחור גבי לבן. אבל אם במקרה הוא יורש, זה תמיד ככה, הוא צריך להגיד ברכה נוספת, הטוב והמיטיב. יש פה שתי ברכות שהוא חייב להגיד. אז זה מעניין הדבר הזה, איך ייתכן שמישהו שבאמת עכשיו נפטר אבא, צריך להגיד ברוך דיין אמס, ואחר כך הוא אומר הטוב והמיטיב. זה ממש פלא פלאים. אז ככה זה בחיים של אנשים יהודים שבעצם מתפקידים בתור בני אדם. זה ככה, אין ברירה. בצורה כזו אנחנו ממשיכים את החיים. We continue our lives even though we have to do two kinds of brachas. One on Baruch Dayan Emes and one Hatov VaMeitiv. I just inherited $1 million. So it's interesting that we have two different רגשות. ממש לפני כמה ימים חיתנתי נכדה בארצות הברית. זה היה יום ראשון, ואמא נפטרה ביום חמישי. אז אני אומר, היא חיתה אחרי החתונה. היא חיתה. היא הייתה חלשה, אבל היא הייתה בסדר גמור. האחים שלי דיברו איתה ביום חמישי בבוקר. They spoke to her on Thursday morning, and you know, she's weak, okay? אבל המעניין הוא בנוסף, okay, שהיא נפתחה בט"ז סיוון. ט"ז סיוון, יום הולדת של אמא. אני לא אאריך עכשיו בדיבור בגלל שאין זמן, אבל מה המשמעות של למות ביום ההולדת? חז"ל כותב על זה הרבה, אבל הנקודה העיקרית, the main point is, שאמא כמובן הייתה צדיקה. אחרת ריבונו של עולם לא היה עושה מה שהוא עשה. לא ייתכן. קצת היסטוריה, כמה שניות. אמא נולדה בגרמניה. אחרי קריסטלנאכט ידעו שהם צריכים לצאת מגרמניה, לא ייתכן שהם יישארו. והם ברחו מגרמניה, היו בהודו קצת זמן. אחר כך הגיעה ההזדמנות לקחת אונייה לשנגחאי. ושם היא נפגשה עם אבא, ושם אני נולדתי, ואחר כך הגענו לארצות הברית. זו היסטוריה קצרה, אבל זו היסטוריה מלאה, בגלל שכתבנו ספר על ידי אמא, בגלל שהיא בעצם דיברה עם מישהי שלקחה את כל האינפורמציה מאלף עד תף, ואחר כך כתבנו את זה וחיברנו ספר קטן, זה רק משפחתי, זה לא נפוץ לאף מקום אחר. בתור אישיות, her personality was very interesting. She always worried about everybody else. She never worried about herself. Everything is all right. I would call her up and say, how are you doing? And she would say, don't ask me those questions. How are you doing? How's your wife? And how are the kids? And how are the grandkids? And so on and so forth. How is she doing? You know, are you feeling better today? You're not? אמא הייתה בצורה כזו שתמיד רק שאלה אנשים אחרים, על אנשים אחרים. מה שלומך? אל תשאל אותי מה שלומי. אל תשאל מה שלומי, אוקיי? אני אבקש לדעת מה שלומך, מה שלום אשתך, מה שלום הילדים, מה שלום הנכדים, והנינים, ואיך אומרים הלאה נינים, אני לא יודע איך להגיד, great grandchildren, לא יודע איך להגיד את זה בעברית, אבל איך? חיפושים? חימשים, אוקיי? ברוך השם. בקיצור, זו הייתה הדאגה שלה, לא על עצמה. דבר אחרון אני אגיד, היא הייתה בבית אבות. היא רצתה להיות בבית אבות השנתיים האחרונים שלה. הייתה לה בעיות עם העיניים, she had macular degeneration, היא לא יכלה לראות טוב, אוקיי? הייתה לה כמה שברים בעצמות מזמן, והיא הלכה עם עגלון. אוקיי? זו לא סיבה, אבל היא אמרה, אני מפחד לגור לבד, I'm afraid to live by myself, I'm very concerned, I don't want to mix up the medicines, אני לא רוצה לערבב את התרופות שאני צריכה לקחת וכו' וכו'. היא רצתה לעבור לבית אבות. ואנחנו שלושתנו אחים, דיברנו איתה, ניסינו לשכנע אותה שזה לא טוב. צץ רעיון, בואו נעשה ניסוי. We're going to do just a few weeks to see how it works out. רק כמה שבועות ונראה איך זה יוצא. If you like it, then okay, you'll stay. You'll tell us how you feel. And if not, not. בסופו של דבר, האוכל טוב, הצוות טוב, המיקום טוב, הכל טוב, 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 טוב. אוקיי? זה לא, בדרך כלל, אנחנו לא חלמנו שנשים את אמא בתוך בית אבות. אבל היא הייתה בסדר. קיבלתי טלפון ביום חמישי, אחרי הפטירה, מבעל הבית של הבית אבות. הוא דווקא היה תלמיד שלי. בקיצור, he calls me and he tells me that your mother made a Kiddush Hashem in my nursing home for 2 years. What was a Kiddush Hashem? My mother would walk around daily, say hello to this one, say hello to that one, and say hello to the other one. And during the day she would keep repeating it. היא הייתה כל כך חברותית, שכשהיא הסתובבה בבית אבות, היא אמרה שלום לזאתי, שלום לגבר הזה, וכולי וכולי וכולי. תמיד רק להגיד שלום לאנשים מדי ויום ויוממו. לא שהיא תקבל מזה משהו. She wasn't doing it for anything. This is her nature. זה הטבע שלה, להגיד שלום. אז הבעל הבית אמר לי שזה היה קידוש השם. כל העובדים הם גויים, הם לא יהודים. הם בכלל לא יהודים. אז הדבר הזה זה דבר גדול. זה פשוט נחת לשמוע מישהו שרואה את זה מדי יום ליום. אחרון מבחינת הזמן, אני צריך להודות. I have to thank my brother Joe and his wife Elka. They live in Chicago. They were the ones who took care of Mom. I came in every once in a while. Yeah, I talked to her all the time, but I came in every once in a while. I did not live in Chicago, and therefore I had no day-to-day contact to do something for her in that respect. So I thank Joe and I thank Elka for doing this. And I also thank my kids. אני מודה לג'ו ולאלקה בגלל שהם גרו בשיקגו והם טיפלו באמא מדי יום ויומו. אני גר בפלורידה, אז אני לא יכול להגיע לשיקגו מדי יום ויומו, זה לא בא בחשבון, אז היא לקח טלפונים, חוץ מזה לא יכולתי לעשות כלום. אז אם כן, אני מודה להם על מה שהם עשו. דבר נוסף, הילדים שלי, שלושה מתוך חמש בנות גרים בשיקגו, והם גם באו לבקר, נכדים באו לבקר, כל הזמן, טיפול. שוב, אני מודה להם. Ma, I have to ask, Mechila, I know I didn't treat you well. And I know you tried to treat me well all the time. When Harriet was nifteres, you were worried about me more than the regular, and you wanted me to get married soon, not to be alone. That's all you talked about. That's all you talked about. So I know that you cared for me, and therefore I need to ask Mechila because I didn't take care of you. So, Vakesh Mechila, Me'ima, Bila Movis Netzach, Mochash, Hem Dima, Mi'al Kol Panim.
Zadie, I'll speak then. Why make I look at Zadie, you sure you make Zadie, he says we have a 10-minute window.
פרק ט"ז בתהילים, במקום לאלוהים שומרי ידי חוסי סיבות, אומרת אדוני אדוני סיבה לא לכו, לא אישים אשר תורצים ובאדירי כוחת סיבות, עיר ועצוי סומך הרמוך ובלסיק נסכם שמידו ובלסוי סומך סומך ספוסוי, אדוני מנצחתי וכוי סיאטו תומית גוירולי, חבולי נובדולי בלימים נפלת שופו אלוהי, אבורך אדוני אשר יוצאני אפלי לא יסיסו ניחיו יסוי, כביסי אדוני לנגדי סמיתי מיני בלמוי, לא כן סומך ליבי ויוגל כבוידע וסוליק שבינו ביתה, כי לא יצא אדוני כביסוי לא יסיתם חסים חולי לא ישופס, לא ידיעני יוירח חיים סוי בסמוך וספונבו, נעימו ישפה מן החונצה. שאנחנו נלך קצת מהר כדי להספיק את השקיעה. הפח נשבור ואנחנו נמלוטנו. והינו יעמד אדוני אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננו יושב בססר עליון בצל שדי סלינון. אוי מר לה אדוני מחסי ומצודו עושי אלוהי יבטח בוי, כי הוא יצילך מפח יכוש מדבר אבוי, וברוסו יופך לא פסחת כנופו תפסת כנופו יצאיבו עמיתוי, לא יפיקו מפחד לא ילומי חייתו כמו מדבר בוי וליאלך וסדורוי כל נציחו אלף ולבוא בימינכו, אילכו לא ייגוש רק בימינכו סביב, ותפילו מעשה לא יצאו מאילך אורו ונגע לא יקרא באוהלך כי מלאכו ויצא ולוך לשמורך בכל דרוכך על כפיים יסעונך פן תיגול בו בין רגלך על שחל ופסם תדרוך תרמויס כפיר וסנין כי ויכו שק ואפלתהו עסקבהו כי יודע שמי יקרויני והנהו ומנוחה בצרוח על צאו ואכבדהו אוי רך יומי מסביעהו וערר בשעוס יקב יובן מעל אלוהים יסתכל בשלושה דברים ואינתו בו לידי אבירו גם מעין בוסו ולענתו ילך ולפני מיעתו עושים ליתן דין וחשבון מעין בוסו מסיפוסו ולענתו ילך למקום אפורים ובסוילו ולפני מיעתו עושים ליתן דין וחשבון לפני מלך מלכי המלוכים הקדוש ברוך הוא עצור תומים פה לא ככל דרוכו מספות אין אמונו ואין עובל צדיק ויושר וגדול לא יצור ורבו על עליו אשר הינך פקוחו יסל כל דרכי בני אדום לא סייס לאיש כדרוכו וחברים עלו לוב להגיד כי יושר אדוני צורי ולא אב לא סבוי אדוני נוסן ואדוני לא כוח יאישה עם אדוני מבוירוך והוא רחום יכפר ובוין ולא ישחית וירבו לו שיבה פוי ולא יעיר את כל החמוסו יקרי
Iskadar, Yitbereish Merabo, Yomadi Brodu, Yamni Mafusei, Yatmei, Yikon, Yikon, Yomechon, Israel, Arvelov is my colleague in Ruamei, Merabo, Yolam Eomayo, Yitbora, Vizaba, Vizfor, Vizroma, Viznasei, Vizador, Vizalev, Shmei, Kudishos, Ob bekosov shirosot, hazov v'nachmasov, Yiram b'yomov imromein, Heishon rabim shemayo, v'ayim tov aleinu, V'yisrael imromein, Oseh shalom emov, V'yati shalom aleinu, V'yisrael imromein.
Amen. Eishes chayil mimtzo v'rochoik mipninim emichro, botach bo lev ba'alo v'shol lo yechzor gemor la'asutoi v'lo yiro kol yemei chayeo, dor she'otzeh merufishtim v'ta'as b'chefetz kafeo, אוי סוקר אוני אוי סויכר ממרחק תובין לחמו ותוקום באויד לילה ותיתן טרף לבייס עורך כוי בנאבוס אז ממוחד ותיקוחר ולחופר חפרנות הקורם אוגרו בעוז מוסנאו ותאמת רויסאו תאמו ביטוי סעק ולא יכבה בלילה נעירו יודעו שילחו בקישר וחפרות ומחופו כפו פורסו לאוני ויודעו שילחו לאביון לא הסירו לביתו משולג תיכול ביתו לא בושני מרבד עם אופסו לא שיש ועמדומון לבושו לא ידע בשעורים ובעלו בסיסו איתי יורד לא דינוס ותמכור וחגויר נוסנו לכנעני אוי והודור לבושו ותצחק שיוי מחמוי יופוסו בפוסו
Everybody thought she was going to live forever.
כמובנהו וישרו בעלו ויהללו רבו יזבנו יססוכוי ואתו לסלטונו שקר אכן והבל היופי שוירס על עינוי תסלול תנו לו מפרי הודאו ויהללו בשעור ומעשהו עקביו בן מעלללו ימר יסתכל בשלושות דברים ואינתו בו לידי אבירו מאין בורסו ולענתו ילך ולפני מייתו עושים ליתן דין וחשבון מאין בורסו ולענתו ילך למקום אחורימו וסוילהו ולפני מייתו עושים ליתן דין וחשבון לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא עצור תומים פה לא יקרחול דרוכו משפוט אילמונו ואינו צדיק ויושרו גדוי לא יצא ורבו עליל יושר הינכו בכוחו יסל כל דרכי בני אדם לא סס לאיש כדרוכו וחפרים מעלו לא להגיד כי יושר אדינוי צורי ולאו לא סבוי אדינוי נוסן ואדינוי לא כוח יאישם אדינוי מבוירו והוא רחום יכפר רבוין ולא ישחיס וירבו לו שיבה פוי ולא יויר כל חמוסוי קדיש עוד מעט לא יוסף הבת רב צבי עם הלוכו ויצא ולוך לשמור חו בכל דרוכך והוא רחום יכפר רבוין ולא ישחיס וירבו לו שיבה פוי ולא יויר כל חמוסוי והוא רחום יכפר רבוין ולא ישחיס וירבו לו שיבה פוי ולא יויר כל חמוסוי והוא רחום יכפר רבוין ולא ישחיס וירבו לו שיבה פוי ולא יויר כל חמוסוי
זה היה 7 דקות אחרי השקיעה לעניין הזמינות זה נכתב ליום. כך כתוב בגשר החיים, עד 13 דקות.
סומך עליך, אין בעיה.
זה דבר אחד. דבר שני, יש מצווה גדולה לקבור בו היום. חוץ מזה שאתם יושבים פחות להמשיך. חוץ מזה, יש מצווה מצטלות. דהיינו בעולם עומדים מפחים זה מגיעים לכל האנשים. עשיתם דבר גדול. אנחנו לא מספיקים. נכון? לוקח יותר זמן. ואתם יכולים גם לחזור. מצווה לעשות חזרת אביב ויום. זה עוד פעם אחת. זה יבוא לכאן.
מכתום לדוד שומרני אל כיחוסי סיבוך אומרת לה אדוני אדוני אותו תיבוסי בלולכו לקדושים אשר באורץ הימו ואדירי כל חפצי בו קרבו עצמוי סומך הרמור ובלסיך נזכם מדום ובלסויס שמוי סומל ספוסוי אדוני מנס חלקי וחויסיית אותו מכגוי רולי חבולים נופלו לי בנים ממף נחלס שופרו לוי אבורך אס אדוני אשר ירצוני אף נילוי סיסרוני חיליוי סוי שיביסי אדוני לנגדי סומתי מיני בלמוית לכן סומך ליבי ויוגל כבודי הבשור ישכון לו בטח כי לא יישא זוי ונפשי לישוי לא יסיתן חסיד חולי רויס שוחס תוידי איני אוירח חיים סויבס מוחויס אספונכו נעימויס בימינכו נצח
יתגדר ויתגדש שמי רבו יום הדיבור חיותי וימליך מחוסי יצמח בפני ויקרב ושיחי וחי יכול ובכל וחי רחותי ישראל וגלוב יזבן קריבים ואמן שמי רבו בורח ויולם ומאום היו יזברה וישתמה ויספור וישמע וישנסי יזדור וישתלב וישתלו שמי קודשה ברכו לילה מקום חפשה ושירסה וחצה ונחלסה יום ילם אמן יהי שלום רב משמעיה וחיים טוב עלינו ויעקב ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
יוספה בת רב צבי, בשם החברה קדישה, בשם המשפחה, הקרובים, הידידים והמלווים, אנו מבקשים ממך סליחה ומחילה שמחס וחלילה פגענו בכבודך, הן בטהרה, בנשיאת המיטה או בתיקון הקבר. אנא סלחי לנו כי אין זו אלא שגגה. החברה קדישה נהגה איתך כמנהגי ירושלים עיר הקודש. הנה מליצת יושר עבור משפחתך, קרובייך וידידייך, ועבור כל כלל ישראל בכל תפוצות ישראל. וייתן השם ויבולה המוות לנצח, ומחה השם אלוקים דמעה מעל כל פנים, ובא לציון גואל במהרה בימינו אמן.
לכי בשלום.
לכי בשלום ושנוכי בשלום ושמתי לגואלו לך לקי ציונים. אתם רוצים עכשיו לדבר?
I'm going to speak in English. I'm sorry for those of you who don't understand. It's just my better language. I'm representing all of the great-grandchildren, everyone watching, and everyone who's here. So this is coming from on behalf of everyone. We grew up having our Bubby from the beginning to the end. She used to babysit me, and amongst all other great-grandchildren, she would dedicate her time to babysit us. And then she watched us grow. She would come to our Chumash parties. She would come to our masivas. She would come to our science fairs in school at who knows what age. She would get up and come see her nachas. We were her nachas. We were what she had to take pride in. What she went through just to get to America and raise a family. She loved us. When we would go visit her in the nursing home or in the Royalton, she would take pride in who we were. She would show the staff, show the people there, this is my granddaughter, these are our children, these are my great-grandchildren. I'm their Bubby. She loved it. Throughout our years, we could always look forward to our birthday, getting a birthday card that wasn't flat. It didn't just have a card in it. It obviously had a couple bucks, but it also had candies. She would give candies. And we always look forward to that popping birthday card that would come, not only with money, but also with treats. And it wasn't just treats for us. She would give enough treats to everyone who was in the family, for all the siblings, because we shared in it together. Whenever we were at family events, she'd always sit there with her smile. She wouldn't show her teeth. She had that smile. Just sheb nachas. Soak it all in. She'd clap her hands to music. Just listen. She loved watching us as great-grandchildren, who she never dreamed of having, grow and stag. Whenever she would come for Shabbos Suda, which was hard for her, but she would come after committing a bunch of times. And no Shabbos Suda ever ended without having her hot cup of water, just sitting there, sipping away. I don't know about any of you, but I can't sip straight a hot cup of water. But Bubby knew how to do it. She would just sit there and relax and watch her nachas. There was one time, just to show a couple stories how much she loved her family. There was one time where she came to us for a meal for Yantiv. It was by the Bavers in Chicago, and I remember she had a piece of meat, and she started choking on the fat. And obviously she was an older lady, so we were very nervous. So we immediately called Atzala. And what we did was we rushed all the kids away. We didn't want the little kids, everyone. We didn't want anyone seeing what's going on. We rushed everyone away. And after the whole deal, Baruch Hashem, she was fine. She coughed it up. They worked it out. She started crying. She was upset. And I'm like, Bubby, why upset? She's like, because I ruined the family situation. I ruined the family Suda. It was all about the family, and she felt bad for what she did. She didn't care about herself. She just choked on a piece of meat. She could have ruined Chas v'Shalom. And she was worried about the family. That's all she cared about. She would occasionally go to New York to her son, Uncle David, and be with the family there, and she would talk when she would come back, she would talk about the Starim, what the children did to her, and how they made it so lively and so enjoyable. It's what she lived for. She would go to Uncle Joe and Auntie Alka a lot for a sukkah sometimes when some of their kids would come, and she just sat there in the sukkah enjoying and soaking up all the nachas. This is what she lived for. This is what she wanted. She appreciated everything she had, every last bit of it. It's something that we could just look up to. A 98-year-old lady, acting as if she was 20. That's exaggeration, but you know, she appreciated everything. She was up to and into it and with it to the last very moment. When I brought her to introduce her to, when I got engaged to my wife, Ahuva, it was a beautiful moment, obviously, to introduce a great grandmother that I had that I was so proud of. And she told us something very interesting. She said, one thing that I did with Sadie Zadie Alav Shalom was every night, no matter what transpired that day, no matter what went on, is we turned to each other and we said, Shluf Kazam. She told me to do the same. I do it every night. I do it every night. We wish each other Shluf Kazam, no matter what. And on Thursday night, it was the hardest Shluf Kazam I've ever said. Bobby, on behalf of all of us, great-grandchildren, I hope you Shluf Kazam. We're here. We're looking up to you. And as great-grandchildren, we should all know what Bobby wants us to do right now is just continue to keep in touch and be a family who loves each other and cares for each other and worries about each other, because that's what she wanted. She wanted us to be a family. She loved us and she cared for us. That's all she wants. And we should just take her life on because she's our legend. She's who we look up to. And we just got to take it and be a family, be together. Everything we do as a family is for Bubby, because this is what she loved and this is what she wanted. Bubby, during your life, you always cared for everyone. You davened for everyone. You still need your tefillas. You're going up to a better place right now. There's a lot to daven for. Shidduchim, please. Parnasa, Yeshuas, for the whole family. Everyone, please. You could do it. And Amit Hashem, we should only share Mesiras Taivos. It should be amazing for all of us, all the family, all of Klal Yisrael. Push, push, push. I hope you're Michael me. I deserve many pets on my papo. And I hope you're Michael on behalf of all the great-grandchildren, grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. Please be Michael us for any time we didn't treat you with the proper cover you deserved. And
Okay, during the period of haste, when I spoke to my mother Thursday morning, and then she was sniffed her 3 hours later,
forgot to mention the fact that how many families can say, how many grandmothers can say that 5 generations, I believe it's 5 generations of children, they're all religious. They all have Kovea Yitzam the Torah. That's a bracha. And I guarantee you, if you would have asked that question of my mother when she was growing up in Germany, and even after she made it to Shanghai, to think that far in the future, that all the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would be Shomrei Torah and Mitzvos, it's a tremendous bracha.
כשנצא מחוץ לחלקה נעשה 2 שורות גברים לניחום אבלים לבנים. עמוקו אם ינחם אסכם בתוך שאר אבלי ציון וירושלים. נסגור את השורה כדי שלא יעקבו. מתי הם חוזרים? לילה, לא יהיה להם מה נעשה בבית של היום?
Finished? Yeah.
זה אצל ההורים. אני קפצתי אליו
הטובה הראשונה במשפחה.
אז נעצר.
4 אדו.